señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todo se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hasta dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi visión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's up? Rise up.
How you doing? How's everybody doing?
Here we go. 2 days in a row. Go
2 days in a row.
You know, can we get on a roll here?
You know what? Don't let us start. We a three-peat. We got a three.
We keep going.
We're gonna keep going. Yes. How are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good this morning. I hope that the Rise Up crew is feeling good as well. Our uprisers that we have in the chat. I hope everybody enjoyed yesterday's show with me and Kiana as we were holding down the fort for the rest of the crew here on the Rise Up Morning Show. And for those that don't know, my name is Isaac Jasper. This is Reverend Kiana Jones Moore. We come individually, but here collectively to give you guys some news, analysis, and information regarding not just the African masses, but also from an international perspective. So I'm doing good this morning.
You have to be doing good to be up right now, and I appreciate you. I just gotta say, I appreciate you.
You know, I think a big part of doing this too is making sure that you have a structured, sleeping schedule. And sometimes that doesn't work out to your plannings, and so it is good to be here on time.
I love it.
And to put ourselves in a position to give some news. There's some stuff that's going on, obviously, as capitalism and imperialism continues. We're always going to have something to talk about when it pertains to the African masses, but we are an international show, so we bring the international analysis as well, a little bit of geopolitics. And so again, I'm happy to be here with you, sister, and getting the rest of this week together again, Tuesday through Friday. I got a lot of stuff rolling out. You guys actually might see a guest. I'm working on someone to be on the show regarding some stuff that has partaken regarding some particular court cases. So trying to get someone on. I'm not going to put any names out there, but just know that I am working on getting some people on here. But what's going on in your neck of the woods regarding radical politics, international relations? What's going on before we get into it?
I will give an update. The RICO 61 here in Atlanta, who are all activists and organizers around Cop City, they had a hearing last week where basically a status hearing, but all 61 did have to be in court, had to appear in court. And there is just so much nonsense surrounding this case, from the fact that the original RICO indictment has it, it bears the date of George Floyd's murder, like literally May 24th, 20 is the date listed in the indictment that the so-called conspiracy began. But what came out at last week's hearing was that the prosecution, the state's attorney general, their office was trying to introduce evidence at the last minute, like well past the deadline for evidence being introduced. They are now trying to introduce a bunch more so-called evidence, and we just continue to see the state playing games with the RICO 61. There's been a lot of controversy about it, simply because there is the glaring fact that many of them, the majority of them, were arrested in a public park and were not trespassing. They were arrested during open park hours. So the validity of the case is already in question. But what we see here is a perfect example of how the state does not care when they are doing things illegally. The state does not care when they are completely out of line. And it takes us to the reason why we can have students now being targeted for simply expressing solidarity with Palestine. We can have students being targeted simply because they say that they are anti-genocide. Students can be targeted, and the Anti-Defamation League is being allowed to interfere in the lives of people because they have the money. Universities want the money. Universities don't want to piss off certain people, and they have this fear of being called anti-Semitic. And of course, the entire co-opting of the term anti-Semitism is spreading. It's rampant. It is the reason for many laws that are being implemented in state legislatures regarding anti-Semitic sentiment being expressed. In the state of Georgia, them making it so that you cannot get a state contract if your company has anything to say about Israel and its dealings and how they murder people. There is just so much going on politically and legally. There's just so much. And I'll leave it at that, because we know how it all ties in. We see it every day. Every single day there is something more. And that is how it all relates to something that we were talking about yesterday, the Trump administration saying that it will target U.S. citizens for deportation. Much of this, and this being protest, anti-genocide protest, standing up against a fascist government, all of this being reasons and grounds for deportation, even of U.S. citizens. It's bananas. And when you think about the fact that the Trump administration has tried to obliterate birthright citizenship, tell me that you don't want non-white people here who are not Zionists without saying it. That's what's happening. You are showing us that what you want is white male hegemony. You want Christian nationalism. You want Zionism. You want apartheid. You want blatant and rampant white supremacy in this so-called country. And every policy decision that's being made coming out of the White House is showing that.
You made some valid points, and I'm going to touch on some of them and compound on them because they're important. One of which is I just want to identify that the fact that 61 individuals were targeted, and yet the major individuals that we've seen that were put on magazines and that were doing news interviews and stuff and such
the 61
aren't a part of it. And you know who I'm talking about in particular, and I'm not going to name any names because as much as I don't want to classify it as unprincipled, because I think it is principled for us to call these people out. This is a cadre, so I would be unprincipled in the manner of which that I talk about certain things. I didn't bring it to the table, but I can, from a subliminal standing, talk about something that I think all of us here agree with, is that there is controlled opposition or controlled insurgency that is very much prevalent in your said favorite organizations, your said institutions that you rely on for news. And it's disheartening because it creates division, factions. It creates that simply because individuals are trying to how can I put this? They're in a position to where they think that when they get a certain amount of income that comes in or rolls out, that they then become the vanguard. They then become the individuals that can only speak or say or think in this regard. And going back to the 61, these are individuals that, again, have worked their ass off to make sure that, one, the life of Tortuguita stays alive, the memory of our comrade, but most importantly, standing in solidarity with not just indigenous people, not just with the communities that will be affected by this cop city. These are the individuals that are affected, the ones that live in this community versus the ones that came, showed right. money, then left, then left the country. You know, let's just see.
You know what? Let me just interject real quick, because the memory of Tortuguita is a very touchy subject for me. And yes. I say this as a person who has regular communication with their family. Yes. You don't see me around them when they come to Atlanta and they're making appearances because the vultures are there. Those people who have written this book that's supposed to be about Cop City without historical context from anybody who grew up in the area, who kicked me off of contributing to this book because I told the truth about a person who was out here threatening to fight Black women and perpetuating misogynoir. These people you will see with Tortuguita's mother every time she comes to the city of Atlanta. I do not fancy myself to be a person that wants to pimp somebody else's legacy, memory, or put myself in a position because of their celebrity. One thing that people who were closest to Tortuguita will tell you, and I am principled enough to admit, and I've said it, and their family knows it, that I never met Tortuguita in person. I never laid eyes on Tortuguita in person, not to my knowledge. It's possible that I could have and didn't know that it was them, but to my knowledge, I never laid eyes on Tortuguita in person. However, being the person who I am, my relationship with their family has been established in a very organic way and has continued. But people who were closest to Tortuguita, who knew them, will tell you one thing they all will say consistently. Tortuguita never wanted to be a martyr. Tortuguita never wanted to be the focal point of a movement. And for people who make their death the focal point of the movement to stop Cop City, those people are so disconnected from what that really means. And this is the reason why that little rinky-dink ass book that they putting out don't bear no kind of, it can't hold water for anything, I will tell you, because that book cannot talk to you authentically about the history of East Atlanta and where that land is. That book has nobody who's contributed to it, who has walked those streets as a child and as a teenager and as an adult and has seen changes and then has not seen changes. Nobody who contributed to that book grew up smelling the landfills that were around that area as a result of environmental racism. Nobody who contributed to that book grew up drinking water that was polluted because of the dealings of the Atlanta Police Department and a previous training facility that was there. Nobody who contributed to that book even knew that there was a training facility there previously because they ain't from there. And yes, I am going to say that I am the only person associated with that movement to stop Cop City who is from there, who can give that historical context, who can tell you about what it really means to see that gentrification happen. The house is still there and has been there for over 40 years. So no, those people can't tell me anything. No, much of their commentary is not valid. And no, I am not taking the position of trying to elevate myself based off of somebody else's child's murder. That is sadistic and it's sick. And I don't understand how people do it and continue to look at themselves in the mirror. So I'm going to say that because I think that is important. that we understand that what Tortuguita truly wanted was not to be the focal point of a movement, but for their love for people and intersectionality of movement to be the focal point that we all stand on and continue to organize in a principled way from that perspective.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you bring that up, because there is a lot of people that play face and act like they knew, them personally, or that, they were in contact with them. And, I will say on screen, I didn't know them. I, wish that I had, had the chance to meet them. And but what I will, say moving forward is that doesn't stop me from understanding what you just talked about, is that he didn't want his name to be remembered and to be idolized and to be, put in a position to be cherished. No, let his love carry on. Let that carry on. And so I'm glad that you bring that up. And so I have nothing but respect, solidarity. I have donated to help with, helping out with the legal fees that are going to get expensive. We'll just be very honest. They're going to get expensive, and the people who said that they had their back are not here.
Yeah.
And they play again. It's performative. It's a performative act that we've consistently seen, and the people who are who get affected by it the most look like us on the screen, or some communities that are affected, or from those communities that they are defending. And I'm glad that you bring that up in a book. For those to clear up all the confusion. Our comrade is not talking about Beyond Cop Cities.
Definitely not talking about Beyond Cop Cities.
We're talking.
That was edited by Dr. Joe James and Kalanji Changa. We are not talking about Beyond Cop Cities. I am talking about a specific book that has in its title something similar to a campaign that is going on now. I think that is like the No Cop Nation. So I don't know. I don't understand how people have a No Cop Nation campaign when you're not including people from Atlanta who have actually organized. And I don't understand how a person who's not even an organizer gains so much notoriety around a movement when they're only on the ground for cameras. But I do, on the other hand, understand it, because people are fickle. People are also so uninformed to a degree that they will accept anything just because they think that is revolutionary action. So a lot of people are just coming on and they're trying to latch on based off of recommendations and suggestions from people. And I mean, admittedly, if you hear a name a lot, you might think that gives that person credibility, gives them notoriety. Definitely does not give them credibility, because some of these names who people say the most are the ones who are not credible people. They are extremely unprincipled people, and they have dealt with me personally in unprincipled ways. So I don't even have to talk about what they've done to other people. I can tell you what they've done to me.
I could tell. I mean, me and you have me and you personally have witnessed, have been a part of, have been a victim to that. And so, again, love, solidarity, respect, moving forward, and we'll keep the people updated on that situation. Yesterday, while we were recording, though, what would be classified as a once in a quote unquote lifetime or once in a blue moon type of situation, St. Louis, Missouri, essentially was under a EF3 tornado warning that ultimately left casualties and left multiple injuries. And so we wanted to start off with that news break for you guys there, as people from the African diaspora, most importantly, to give a name exact. Chairman O'Malley was on the scene and making sure that everything was okay, people were okay. And this goes to show you, one, little bit later when we get into the video that Chairman O'Malley is in, that I found, it shows you that the real organizations and the people who you don't really see on again, going back to if you see someone on camera 9 times out of 10, majority of the time, they're not a good person. It's just a fact. They're there for specific reasons. The ones who you don't really hear about are the ones that, you know, or that you do but don't really see on camera a lot, are like the Chairman O'Malley's that have been the head of an organization that has been helping not just individuals in St. Louis, not just individuals in California, not just individuals in Florida, but all over the occupied territories of Turtle Island. And on top of that, creating international relations that need to be made in order for us to topple imperialism. See, the reason why the Uhuru 3 were targeted wasn't because they were quote unquote Russian assets. It was because they were feeding Black children the same way that the Black Panthers were feeding Black children. The Uhuru 3 were not targeted because they were Russian assets, quote unquote. Is because they were what? They were advocating, they were agitating an imperialist system and advocating for the self-determination of all Africans and those that believe that Africans deserve liberation, self-determination, and so do the indigenous populations here in the occupied territories of Turtle Island. It's very clear when you start to see, you know, who the good person is versus who the bad guy is, you know, who's the superhero versus who's the villain. And, you know, this particular situation really shows you, because again, you know, who's going to come in and try and say that they're saving the day? Red Cross,
Salvation
Army, and they're going to make billions of dollars off of destruction, famine, exploitation, and death. And it's unfortunate. And this article goes over just a little bit of what the aftermath was before and after of an aerial map. And so I think it gives you like an option where you can slide through.
It does. You're able to slide through from left to right, and you see what St. Louis looks like before, and then you see what St. Louis looks like after. And you'll have to zoom in to see it in a little bit more detail for it to even make sense to you, because it's a little bit hard to see what these things even mean. Like, what are these colors? Can I see houses? You know, let me see a neighborhood and see how one neighborhood has changed in the wake of the destruction. And what people have to understand about why this is important to revolutionary work and organizing is because it shows how the negation of climate protections is creating the conditions so that these natural disasters are more likely and more often. What we see now, I remember as a girl, you know, I'm born and raised in Atlanta, so I'm well acquainted with tornadoes. And yes, just like there are people who live in certain parts of the country who know that they have a hurricane season. Here in Georgia, we have always had a tornado season. I remember moving to New Jersey and being nonplussed as to why there was no tornado season. They didn't have tornado drills in school the way I did here. So my children didn't grow up that way. But then we did live to experience hurricanes Irene and Superstorm Sandy. So you see how there is now an acceleration of these types of disasters. Just last year, I believe it was. Time is so messed up for me now. So I don't even know if it was 2024 or 2023 that Helene hit Georgia. I feel like it was 2024. But still, we are seeing hurricanes, we're seeing tornadoes, things that are quote unquote out of season, but also the force with which we are experiencing them, the intensity of these weather events is amplifying. We're seeing them more often. They are happening also back to back to back. Like these things are happening back to back to back, and so much so that now I understand why when I turned on the news this morning, they were talking about a weather system that is moving this way toward Georgia, and they talked about the possibility of a tornado. They talked about extremely high winds, there even being the possibility of hail. All of these things, like what has to create these conditions in order for this to happen? And you have an administration that has allowed for just the rollback of environmental protection regulations all across this country and in every single industry, whether it is the automaking industry, whether it is chemical manufacturing. You know, I live right near the biolab facility where there was a fire late last year, biolab chemical fire. We're rolling back regulations on these companies. The Georgia State Legislature in this past legislative session passed a bill that would make it so that people who manufacture products like Roundup that do cause cancer and cause other illnesses, they can't be sued by people. Like, we are in a time where the few things that were in place that kept us in, even though it was a low level of regulation, all of that stuff is being done away with, and all the regulations are gone. It's like hands off. The gloves are totally off. And now we see that as environmental regulations are being rolled back, as environmental racism is allowed to be proliferated, here we are with these weather events that adversely affect the places where we live. And many times, a place like St. Louis is not getting the same help that you're going to see for people who live in the hills of Hollywood.
Exactly. And this, again, I have a goddaughter that lives in St. Louis or close to St. Louis. Our comrade Janae, who's also one of the co-hosts over at Tin Media Network, so she is a comrade of the collective in of it itself. Is in St. Louis, and so I want individuals to understand that these situations, they do not factor in our communities when they make the decisions to cut or deregulate funding, or in this case, as Trump has done before situations like this have came about, is months ago during his first executive order, he cut rollbacks on what was it? It was federal funding for weather institutes to be able to track track certain things, but most importantly, it was to mitigate and relieve the duties of thousands of federal workers that could have helped stop a St. Louis tornado from being as significant as it was, meaning that they could have alerted the people. There was no alerts, mind you, that St. Louis got. There wasn't a tornado warning. There was nothing. It hit and then it left. And I think that this is very important, being that this administration is going to be notorious for the rollbacks that it has created in not just jobs, not just in funding, but in intellect. And
yes.
Start at there is that it's not wise to cut back on institutions that have been created that, like as you said, even at the lowest level, still helped these dangerous times. And it's the further identification that we are down a pathway where every avenue that we come across is an anti-intellectual endeavor now, because we've allowed it. So.
Absolutely. And for those who aren't familiar with the scale of tornado intensity, on the EF scale, an EF3 tornado, the one that hit St. Louis, this is a tornado with speeds that are estimated between 136 and 165 miles per hour. And we are living under an administration that wanted to dismantle FEMA. You're not going to hear me singing the praises of FEMA, but also there is some utility there. Like I said, we are at very low levels right now, but they're seeking to make it that we are at no level. They're seeking no regulation, no protection, and that means that there will be no hope of recovery for people. This further feeds into under-resourced communities continuing in the same way with even less resources. And when destruction happens like this, who's there to help pick up the pieces?
And we also have to identify too is that they have solely through speculation or even just through dumbfound curiosity that they can make money off of individuals suffering from these situations. And Chairman O'Malley talks about this in the video that I'm getting ready to play. This is, again, going back to who else have you heard that's from the movement or that you have seen that's in St. Louis right now? And this is not to disregard those that, again, you might not know about, including us, because they're not on camera, but those that are on camera, we talk about. Who do you see in St. Louis? Because I see Chairman O'Malley, and I've been seeing him. And it wasn't just that I seen him. It was that my dad seen him. It was that my grandfather seen him, and they've seen him for years. This is generations that my family has seen this dude do. You know, I don't want to call him a dude, so let me not be disrespectful. The chairman, this is the young part of me, so I have to apologize. I do. I have seen the work, and the work will never go unnoticed, especially from me. And to know that even through the midst of it all, winning the court case, winning, the potential probation, all of that. He's still, again, people first, and that's always been the Uhuru movement. So I just want to play this video for you guys, so that way you can kind of hear what's going on from Baba O'Malley.
Yeah, and they don't even want to call it a tornado. They don't want, they call it. Yeah, because there's a lot of money involved in it. Once you have to declare, some kind of emergency relief and what have you. So they want to keep that from this community. So they're willing on some levels to pass out food and stuff like that, but they will attack us when we try to have our own capacity to get our own food. You understand? That's the thing. So anyway, we're going to be doing a lot of stuff, and going to be, pulling together resources to help, our own communities. The Black people need to get together, build our own communities. So we're going to be working with that. Yeah. All right.
Well, I appreciate that, though.
Yeah.
We definitely need, we always the ones left out.
Always.
Yeah.
But that's why we have to be organized. We lay in the cut and let these Negroes say that they're speaking for us. Because we won't speak for ourselves. And this is what we're trying to pull together now. You know where the Uhuru House is, don't you?
Yeah, I do.
On Alice and West Florissant?
Yes, I do.
Every Sunday, we're there for this community, for our community. Every Sunday at 3 o'clock. So that we can get organized and take care of our own affairs. Because this city built itself on the backs of Black people. And that Black people have to be organized to take back what belongs to us. Just to feed, clothe, and house ourselves, to have a decent life. I mean, we spent $160,000 to build that basketball court down there because the city wouldn't have a basketball court in here for Black people. We built it. And this is what we have to have the capacity to do for ourselves. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
So every Sunday at 3 o'clock, we're there. And yeah, I live right down the street. Yeah, that's the house down there that the feds raided. Yeah. Say it again? Akeem. Oh, where'd you get your name? Your uncle gave it to you? This is Sally. Yeah. And this is your house right here. Oh, good to see you, Hakeem. And yeah, my name is O'Malley. Yeah, they call me the chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
I had already heard about you.
Okay, good to see you too.
Yes, sir.
And these are comrades who work with us. This is Ona Zanea Shatella. She lives down here as well with me. Yeah. So we just went, oh, here she is. Yeah. Yeah. She runs a part of a movement that's called the Black Ankh. You know what the Ankh is, Akeem? Tell them what the Ankh is. Can somebody say? For life. And it looks like, it's sort of like the cross was sort of came from, with a head on it, right? And we created the Black Ankh is our equivalent of a Red Cross, because the Red Cross don't serve us, you see. And so we have to have the ability to take care of ourselves. And so she is a local representative of the Black Ankh. She teaches things like, CPR, how to deal with burns, how to deal with bleedings, your life, so we don't have to depend on them. As much as we can, we need to do for ourselves. That's the thing that we're fighting for. have to be self-governing. Don't you? You can't have no respect if you can't govern yourself, right? Somebody else, overlords. Yeah, yeah. So Akeem and brothers, I see you looking at the corner.
That boy sharp.
Yeah. Okay, he's on post. Right? You're on post, right? Yeah, on post.
Y'all sharp.
Right
Y'all
on.
care about this community.
So that was just I didn't know that clip was that long. Nonetheless, it does show again that one chairman lives in that community that was affected and made some valid points. Is that the Red Cross is only going to come in here and give us food and whatnot, take their pictures, but they're not invested in wanting to rebuild the community, because once they see that we could do it for ourselves, it becomes a problem for them. Then they can't make the money off of it. But he made something that was made a very specific point, is that they don't ever want to classify natural disasters that happen in the Black community.
In Black communities, they don't.
And this is something that I'm going to be digging into, the continued egregious acts that people can, not people continue to identify, but more or less that continues to happen. So it's like, how can we continue to allow Mali Ishatella to tell us, the truth and not utilize the truth? That's really what is where we're at now.
No, I'm with you on that. When you think about it, we remember the earthquake that happened in Haiti in 2010.
Yes.
And that was when I learned what the Red Cross does not do when they show up. That was when I learned that the Red Cross will drop a box of food off in your community and you don't even have power or a stove to cook the food. The Red Cross is doing what is most performative and most expedient, but all of that money that people are donating is going to the salaries of people working for a nonprofit. It is not reaching the community. And the government does not want to declare natural disasters or a state of emergency in Black areas because they do not want to be obligated to provide aid and to render appropriate aid, not just you'll throw some scraps at us and we'll take it, but appropriate aid that goes to repair and rebuilding and restoration of the area. When I think about that and understanding what is coming this way toward Atlanta, as far as the weather is concerned and the things that could happen, the destruction that it could leave behind, I'm thankful to be a part of a collective that has been organizing people in emergency preparedness. I'm glad to be a part of a collective that has been organizing street medic trainings, herbalism and gardening, teaching people how to grow where they are, teaching people how to do splinting and tourniquets if you have to, stop the bleed training, because quiet is kept. A lot of people in Black communities die because of things that happen during natural disasters. Like, we don't all bleed because of gunshot wounds. Just last week,
stereotype. That's a stereotype. It's a deeply disrespectful stereotype, because if you do this, if you look at the real statistics that are given, again, you're correct. We die from prostate cancer. We just went over a major part of the percentage of why young Black men die young, or why they have certain diabetes is one of them. Type 2, type 1 especially. Sciatic nerve pain, all of these things, and then compile on telling a young Black child and an athlete to go out there and consistently get hit upside the head, up and down.
Yes.
Run up and down the court, and now you got more ailments, that talk about, and it adds on to, again, a list of things that we die from.
Yes.
That capitalism gets paid for. It's the siphoning of our lives into this capitalist mode. And for people to say that we only die by a gunshot wound, I think is, again, it's fucked.
I mean, just last week or the week before, there was a young girl who died because a tree fell on her house and she was impaled. So the very next weekend, it was Mother's Day weekend, my husband and I were walking, and we were walking past a row of cars outside of an apartment complex, and there was one car that a tree branch had fallen and was going through the windshield. And we heard the people behind us walking saying, oh my gosh, I knew that was going to happen. I was hoping that lady was going to move her car. But imagine if the lady had been in the car at the time that the branch fell and came through her windshield. She could have been hurt. She could have been bleeding from that. And that is something that is useful to know, how it is that if you are there with that lady, how do you stop that bleeding?
Yeah, or how do you stop
that we can
how do you stop them from manipulating that situation? Because that natural disaster will get turned into she was drunken and disorderly and she ran into a falling down widow. And this is the world that we live in, is that we just seen this happen with Roddy Hilton Jr.'s son, is that they said it was a stolen car and they were only behind on a couple payments.
Help me.
Behind on a couple payments. So there was lie after lie after lie after lie, and I'm not justifying, but I'm not also not standing in solidarity with another black man, okay? Because of what he was told, fallacies about his own son's death, the assassination on his son, essentially. And we live in a world where FAFO seems to be the new wild west.
It is,
you know, and that's where we're at right now. And I think in this regard, you know, seeing one Chairman O'Malley out there, a multitude of other comrades I know. Janae, again, like I said, my comrade Janae over on Tin Media, she works with the organization out there, so I know they're helping. I know there are people that are getting what's needed. We got to mitigate Red Cross out of this, though, because that is one of the major focal points as to why these situations stay the way that they are. I mean, we look at the fact that I'm glad that Cooperation Jackson got involved and completely chased the hell out of Red Cross completely and was like, no, this is going to be community-based effort. You are not going to come in here and try and misconstrue and create a narrative that is not rooted in truth. It's not rooted in the people's truth. And I think in this case, seeing Chairman there, I know that the truth is going to come out, especially with him already, you know, pointing out they're trying to classify this as something else, you know, so just high wind, you know, this is just a gust of wind. You're telling me a gust of wind just did this? This, man, makes no sense.
And for those who are watching and you want to be able to help with what has happened in St. Louis, we know that Chairman Yeshitela and his organization is there on the ground. You can donate to them at APSP Uhuru, that's UHURU.org. APSP Uhuru, UHURU.org. That is the African People's Socialist Party. They are there. You heard about their initiative, the Black Ankh, which is their answer to the Red Cross. Black life.
Yes.
A black life, right? We are giving life to make sure that we have life-giving services. You know, someone asked me about a month or two ago at a work event, what was I doing in the movement to stop Cop City? And they asked this because they don't see me, you know, in places where they would expect to, but they see the posers. And what I told the person was, I'm out here teaching people how to live. I'm out here teaching people how to survive in a police state. I'm out here teaching people what it means to be prepared for all types of emergencies, how to protect themselves, you know, through community self-defense. We have Muay Thai classes. What are you doing? Oh, you still out here organizing a protest for what? Okay, it's fine.
You still asking to organize the protest? You know,
still, exactly. You're still doing that, but I'm making sure that people can live, and that is what I think is the most important thing that we can do: teach people how to live, how to survive, and how to resist.
Yeah, and see, you know, the performative nature has gotten so egregious and so it's become so it festers so much. You know, I'm trying to find a word when I can just be simple with it. To the point where people will look at the performative nature as real activism. So when they hear like you're creating a Muay Thai, you know, self-defense class and actually standing on making sure that stays, you know, afloat, people will be like, well, you know, that's not really useful, not really understanding that it's highly useful because, again, you know, not in, and this is a truth. This is not a fact. This is an absolute. Not everybody's going to be able to pick up a gun. Mentally,
That's right.
not everybody's going to be able to pick a gun, which means, yes, we're going to need some daredevils out there. We're going to need some Electras. We're going to need some individuals out there that are just willing to whoop ass with fists and feet. That's
Absolutely.
what it is. And that's all we're asking is
for might not be handy.
All we're asking is for effort. E for effort. It's not hard. But as stated, we're holistic people, so not everybody's going to be able to pick up a gun. Not everybody's going to be able to, you know, some people will be more inclined to pick up the gun rather than to fight. There'll be people that are more inclined to fight rather than to pick up a gun. These are things. There's more people that probably won't even want to do that because they're too reserved, you know, and that's okay. But intellectually, they could bring something to the table. They could write out this. They could do whatever is needed, that, you know, for the collective. We all have a different job description. But with that job description comes 10 others, because we also know that as much as we have the people, we're intellectually shorthanded right now. We're intellectually shorthanded, and that's something that has not been identified, and we put so much power and might into those that are performative, and when the shit hits the fan, where are they? Taking trips to Cuba, you know, getting walked around by a bunch of gusanos, you know, that there isn't, that, you know, to tell you that there isn't anti-black behavior running rampant in Cuba still, you know, and that they're not wanting to identify with the genocide, with the revolutions and genocides of Africans that have happened in Cuba post, you know, prior to Fidel and revolution. They don't, you know, they'll go to North Africa and pretend to be sports fans now, you know, while RICO charges are going around. These are real things. These are real things, you know, and to those that don't know, these performative acts can only take you so far.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So far. And these individuals know this, which is why they've blocked, why they've changed the narrative. You went from being again, you went from being an activist to then taking $200+ million, you know, from the backs of people here that paid into Wi-Fi for you to then go and become a sports, a sports and a sports owner. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous behavior, but it's not surprising because, again, it's the intellectual stinting that we have that's very prevalent. So I feel like I've talked a lot, Kiana. I apologize.
It's okay. Look, I mean, you're just identifying the tools of counterinsurgency, right? Yes. You're identifying the fact that there are people who are put before us to be made into idols that we will follow instead of following revolution.
That part.
That's the reason why you get a charismatic leader of a so-called community organization who really doesn't know much about dealing with people, but that organization is revered and respected, and people follow them, and they are keeping people from revolutionary action because they get people crunk off a rally, they get people crunk because of a book, they get people crunk, because they show up at court for the 61. But at the end of the day, like, are you out here making it so that there won't be a number 62 to the 61? At the end of the day, you want to say that you are revolutionary because you showed up to a court rally, a rally outside the courthouse to support these people. But how much money are you giving for their defense? Talk about what has happened, since the breakdown of the Solidarity Fund. How are people's defense being paid for? Who's still waiting on a lawyer? When y'all made all these promises to people, what's going on? And why now, in this moment, do we have a person who's defending many of the 61 working for NLG being fired? How are we doing this? How is this happening? What are we doing? But that is counterinsurgency at its best.
Yeah, it's control. It's controlled opposition to its finest degree, and an individual can throw as much money as they want to a situation for legal fees or for anything like that to try. But no, at the end of the day, you need to be behind bars the same way that these 61 individuals are behind bars, because they actually believed for what they stood for they didn't, versus, the counterpart to that is it's egregious. And, moving forward, I will continue to subliminally identify this stuff, because I think that these people do not need to be to be held to some popular status. Like, we're in high school, for one. That's dog shit politics to me. And I'm better than that, and I think people are better than that as well. But be weary of who tells you that they're on the ground and who says that that they're helping out, because they might be helping out just so that 20 years from now they don't get classified or get put on the section of which that we would classify people as racists or against all. I think it is time for a break, though, so that we can get to this next set of articles. Hope you guys have been enjoying this. I know I have. I hope you're enjoying this too, Kiana, because we're getting this feels like a little bit of rehab for us.
No, it's the therapy session. It's the therapy session
for us right now.
Thank y'all for bearing with us.
Yes. We are going to be back. We are going to let Baina Bello speak regarding Haiti, and we'll be back after this, you guys. So hope you guys are enjoying this. This is a what did you call it? I'm missing the term now. A black power up. There we go. We're changing it around. A black power up. We'll be back, you guys.
We don't like you because the only information we have about you is what your enemy and ours tell us about you. And you don't like Haitians either, because you have the same information from the same source about us. When was the last time the New York Times told you anything about Toussaint Louverture? When did the New York Times talk about Jean-Jacques Dessalines? When did you ever hear about what is the mission of this country? They even have us clap to be occupied in 1994. Yes, I stood up against the coup in Haiti. Yes, I stood up for the return of the will of the people in Haiti. Because at the time, yes, Aristide won by 70% of the votes. He is the choice of the people, so he should go back. But when I'm told, okay, he's going back with military occupation, I said, no, that's too expensive. This price, not for me. Most of my comrades were against me. But that's not their fault. Lack of vision, lack of knowledge of our street, lack of understanding. What does military occupation mean in any country? I don't care where. That is not the problem. Military occupation means prostitution will rise up out of the street into the best families, number one. Because General so-and-so and Colonel so-and-so from the U.S. Army is not going to go in the street and pay $2. No, and he's got to have a prostitute. He's going to go in your home, my home, take my sister. Number two, the cost of living must rise at least 15%. That's a fact, whether you want it or not. Any place where there have been occupation, those are the two first results of any occupation. So before, 5 goods for $1. Today, 17, 18, 19, 20 goods for $1. You know how many people cannot eat in this country? 70% of the population is not working. The World Bank says Oh, to make things better, we have a good plan for you. Things are gonna get real good, real fast. First, the public workers must be reduced by half. A study proved that every working Haitian feeds at least 7 people. And we only 30% of the population, the working population, is working. Now when you're going to reduce it to 15% of the population, how many people are we each going to feed? And then what happens to the ones who don't have somebody working to feed them? In 1946, Haiti imported nothing of what it needed to survive on a day-to-day basis. In 1960, Haiti did not import its food. Since 1970, there is progress, I think they call it. We start importing things. And today, 1997, Haiti imports even lemon, even plantain, even corn. And don't forget, we are buying it with 20 goods for $1. But remember, Haiti is nothing but an example. It's nothing. Whatever we say about Haiti, we could say it about Zaire, we could say it about Nigeria, we could say it about Togo, we could say it about Ghana, we could say it about Guinea, we could say it all over wherever our people are. And that's why we must make it our business. If we say we're serious about growing, if we say we're serious about going to war, you have to know what's happening in every part of your world. Don't sit here, I'm a black American, I'm living in Newark, New Jersey. Well, New York, I have no problem in Newark, New Jersey, we're okay. We have a nice mayor. No, we've got to become involved. Because whatever they're doing to us in Haiti, whatever they did in Zaire, in Lomé, in Ghana, it's coming to you, brother. It's coming your way, if it's not already there.
It's coming if it ain't already there.
If it ain't already there, the truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes, and this correlates with what we're getting ready to get into regarding the Congo. This situation, again, when you look at how performative activism has graded, genocides, and I'm being like realistic, here they've put the Congo down at the bottom. And it's rooted in my opinion, a lot of colorist behavior, a lot of racist, prejudiced behavior. But that is not to take away from the fact that Palestine needs to be highlighted. What I'm highlighting is that we have performative activism that loves to pick and choose which genocides they want to talk about, but don't really make the connections from not just a geopolitical, not just from a dialectical, historical, materialist position, but more or less from a position to connect it to the occupied territories of Turtle Island, and every other occupation that's out there is connected. It's not, they have the same oppressors, and we don't see that. And I think this article highlights that it doesn't matter who's in power. What matters is that the structure of settler colonialism has not changed. And until we change it, the people of the Congo, our brothers and sisters in Africa, will continue to be exploited. We'll continue to see resistant acts against imperialism if we don't properly address imperialism in the fashion that the Sahel Alliance is doing it, the EFF, a multitude of other countries as well. So I think that this article speaks a lot. We'll go in depth with it, into it. But what needs to be identified is that, you know, the Congo is used for us to do this. What's in this laptop, what's in this camera, what's in this microphone, what's in this iPad, in this phone, in these lights, all of this is a product of this is exploitation. And until
Absolutely.
go ahead, you know, and
No,
until
I was just gonna say, you know, the fact that there's so much talk from a country like the United States about another country's resources. We would never allow this. No one could come into the United States and take what we produce naturally here or what is produced by the earth mother here. That could never happen. However, the United States thinks that it's okay. And it's mentioned in the article. I'll let you get into it to talk about this, the emergency preparedness executive order that was issued, where our so-called president is talking about us having to guarantee access to coal.
Yes. So the article starts off by saying, nestled in the green hills of the Masisi territory in Congo, the artisanal Rubaye mining site hums with the sound of generators as hundreds of men labor by hand to extract coltan, a key mineral crucial for producing modern electronics and defense technology, and fiercely sought after worldwide. Rubaye lies in the heart of eastern Congo, a mineral-rich part of the Central African nation in which for decades has been ripped apart by violence from government forces and different armed groups, including the Rwanda-backed M23, whose recent resurgence has escalated the conflict, worsening an already acute humanitarian crisis. So for those that are out there saying, you know, congratulations to Kagame for potentially 40 years as a exploiter of his own people, you need to stop, because this dude has actively caused gruesome, acts against his own people, at the behest of imperialists, which is disgusting. Right here, it says right here that as the U.S. spearheads peace talks between Congo and Rwanda, Congo's President Felix, I'm going to butcher his name and I apologize, Tshisekedi, has sought out a deal with the Trump administration, offering mineral access in return to Americans supporting in quelling and the insurgency and boosting security. While details on the deal remain unclear, analysts in Rubaye might be one of the mining sites which fall under its scope. Eastern Congo has been in and out of crisis for decades. The conflict has created one of the world's largest humanitarian crises, with more than 7 million people displaced, including 100,000 who fled homes this year. Rubaye mines have been at the center of the fighting, changing hands between the Congolese government and rebel groups. For over a year now, it has been controlled by M23 rebels, who earlier this year advanced and seized the strategic city of Goma and Bukavu in a major escalation of the conflict. Says right here, despite the country's exceptional mineral wealth, over 70% of Congolese live on less than $2.15 a day. That is, wow. Medals for modern life and military preparedness for men working in the Rubaye mines who rely on the mining for their livelihoods. Little has changed over decades of violence. One of them is Jean-Baptiste Bigirimana, who has worked in the mines for 7 years. I earn $40 a month, but that's not enough, he said. Children need clothes, education, and food. When I divide up the money to see how I will take care of my children, I realize it's not enough, he said, adding that he doesn't know where the minerals he mines goes once they leave Rubaye. And so this
This is
go ahead, comrade, go ahead.
You know, Trump issued an energy emergency executive order, national, or it was either national energy or energy emergency executive order, something to that effect. But within that order, he establishes the National Energy Dominance Council. And this is a council created to make America energy dominant. Within that order, it says it shall be the policy of my administration to make America energy dominant. There is hereby established within the executive office of the president the National Energy Dominance Council. Within the functions of this council, part of the functions are to recommend to the president a plan to raise awareness on a national level of matters related to energy dominance, such as the urgency of reliable energy, the improvements in technology achieved through reliable energy sources, the national security concerns with removing reliable and affordable energy sources, the jobs supported by the energy sector, and the regulatory constraints driving up the cost of reliable energy to consumers. So here within that one function, we have, this is where the news media and propaganda comes in with making people believe that, data centers, for example, are necessary, that they are the wave of the future, that we have to have them despite the enormous amount of electricity and water power that is required to keep them running, and that they take up vital space in communities for housing and green recreational spaces. Right? They don't create jobs. They create health problems within people who live around them. And yeah, data centers in most states are getting huge tax breaks, while ratepayers, individual customers, are picking up the slack for what they don't pay. But also, part of that plan says raise awareness on a national level of matters related to energy dominance. So you already see, like, the propaganda plan is right there to make us believe that we need these quote unquote reliable sources of energy, which we all know to be fossil fuels at this point. This is what the energy sector, and I'll say the power companies, this is what they're pushing. We can't do these things without coal. We can't do these things without gas. We can't do these things without nuclear, which they try to tout as clean energy. But then going farther down, another part of the function of this particular council is to rapidly facilitate approvals for energy infrastructure, approving the construction of natural gas pipelines to or in New England, California, Alaska, and other areas of the country underserved by American natural gas. So this is pumping more gas into communities and destroying more communities, creating more cancer alleys, facilitating the reopening of closed power plants. That is the reason why right here in Georgia, all of those coal plants that were supposed to be closed by 2028 are now being extended to 2035 and beyond, and bringing small modular nuclear reactors online. No one has ever even seen a small modular nuclear reactor. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they really do. But also within this, the council is responsible for making sure that what was mentioned in this article, that how did he pose it? The metals necessary for, military and for modern life and military preparedness. This is part of the function of this council. So the fact that we are talking about this, because a lot of people might say, like, why do you keep talking about Congo? Why do you keep talking about Sudan? Why do you keep talking about what's happening in Rwanda or with Rwanda between the Congo? This is why. Because the United States is a major player in all of this, the same way the United States is a major player in the genocide in Palestine. We cannot let people forget that this is all connected, that all of these dots are connected in the same badass drawing of white history. I'm telling you, because they are painting the picture for us. We see the dots. It's up to us to connect the dots so that we stop thinking that oppression in Sudan is not oppression right here in the United States, that oppression in Congo is not oppression here, that resistance to Ibrahim Traore and Black liberation in Burkina Faso is not resistance to Black liberation right here on Turtle Island. It is all one and the same.
And you make a valid point that leads with the title of the show. Is it settler colonialism is a structure,
yes,
that we consistently keep being evolved, meaning that the platform keeps being added onto the base level of this is settler colonialism. What came out of settler colonialism? Oh, that was capitalism.
Capitalism. Mm-hmm.
That was transatlantic slave trade, the justification of bodies, human resources. Walter Rodney goes into how Europe underdeveloped Africa, stole their resources, and then one of the last things that they had seen that was a major commodity, obviously, was human resources.
Absolutely.
The next stage is imperialism. Oh, we did this to Africa. Well, there's 5 other papal bulls that justifies that we could do this on a mass scale. And guess what? Other people have been doing it for a while now. And then they built another on top of that. Okay, well, now we created corporations that have, built, in their whole entire livelihood and institutions off of the exploitation. JP Morgan, BlackRock,
yes,
Vanguard, all of these.
Wells Fargo.
Corporate capital, corporate oligarchy. Then the next stage is technocracy, which is they want to run it all. They want to create uber amounts of caste systems that makes it completely impossible for us to get what we need. And if we need in order to get that, we're going to have to sell off everything, if not our whole entire body. That's what they want now.
Absolutely. And what we see is right here, within this executive order, it talks about removing regulations. And that was what we talked about in the previous story, environmental regulations being taken away that would hasten many natural disasters, many adverse weather incidents that will affect us, and they will hit our communities the hardest, and we'll be the ones left without the resources. So why would we continue to appeal to a government that's not interested in helping us or making sure that we have resources, instead of building community and making sure that we create the resources, that we have childcare co-ops, that we have food co-ops, that we have community security details, that we have community self-defense classes, that we have emergency preparedness and first aid trainings? Why would we not do that? But instead, we're going to go down to city council and give some comments that are going to be ignored anyway. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to hide behind the Browns Act and pretend like they can't give no comment to it because it's too flamboyant, or it's too frivolous. They love to use frivolous as, a word now, especially in affairs, use frivolous a lot in regards to, you getting the shit beat out of you by cops. It was frivolous. Again, valid points that we need to articulate. How does this end? Will this end by us properly contradicting it? What we're doing here now. You sitting watching as a viewer, and thank you to those that are watching and that are tuning in to the Rise Up Morning Show. My name is Isaac Jasper. This is Kiana Jones Moore, and we are part of a big. We got about 9 people. We got about 9 faces, and we're just 2 of them. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that is tuning in. And if you like what you see and would like to support our movement, you can do so by donating at patreon.com/Black Power Media Reloaded. And I apologize for the background noise if you guys hear that as well. Let's get into the next subject because the background noise kind of messed me up.
That's cool. That's cool. We're moving along. We're doing a good job at connecting the dots today.
Yeah.
I love you.
Yeah, and this correlates, especially with the term that we're using today, connecting the dots, making people understand that settler colonialism is a structure that has never left. It's not a time period that we can go back, to the use. It has always been prevalent. It's always been here. Israel, I'm a journalist. What the work that I do, I started off as a sports journalist through Dan Patrick School of Sports Broadcasting, and made my transition basically from a personal decision that I would rather stand on the right side of history. And, I'm kind of sick and tired of the way they want me to talk about Black athletes, and you know, I have a multitude of I have some stuff that's getting ready to roll out next year. I'm thinking next year might be a good year for me to roll it out, especially since I need some, not approval, but I need someone to look at all. I need an editor. Yeah, I'm completely, aware of the amount of journalists that have lost their lives by simply documenting the truth. I remember that I have a lot of background noise. Is there any way that you could take over? I do apologize. I gotta fix this because it's a little disrespectful for me. Sorry.
I can't hear the background noise. I'll tell you honestly, and I think that if I can't hear it, other people probably can't hear it. But definitely take care of what you need to take care of. I cannot do a lot of commenting on how it is that you are being asked to water down your commentary and your assessment of things. But what I will say is that we understand that sports teams and sporting in general in the United States is nothing but an extension of chattel slavery. Whether it is the NFL, whether it is the NBA, this is another plantation. And even if we look beyond our borders into what everyone else calls football, what we call soccer, when we look at these leagues, we see that whenever there are Black players who are not on majority Black teams, they are subject to an intense amount of discrimination and disrespect. And when I think about sports commentary, I'll take a Stephen A. Smith, for example. And this is, if we're talking about counterinsurgency within the sporting world and helping to detract from seeing it for the extension of colonialism that it is, a Stephen A. Smith is a person who was there to do just that. A Stephen A. Smith is a person who got a start that seemed legitimate because he was doing a lot of reporting in those days in Philly, doing a lot of reporting exclusively on Allen Iverson and the Sixers and how things were going there. And people enjoyed that commentary because, Allen Iverson came out and it was like, dang, look at this dude. Stephen A. Smith was giving commentary specifically around Iverson and the Sixers and gained a bit of credibility because of that type of reporting that he was doing. Fast forward to, I would say, around 2005, 2006, around that time where he's now appearing on different radio shows and becomes a regular contributor to the Steve Harvey Morning Show. And that's a nationally syndicated radio program. Now we begin to see Allen Iverson moving into more of the corporate reporting, where Stephen A. Smith is now taking digs at Black athletes and wanting to present a certain image of Black athletes, particularly in basketball. And many of the times, Stephen A. Smith would be the one who would be brought in to say that a Black athlete who maybe had legal issues or whatever, oh, this person did something dumb. They're acting like a thug. Now we see them acting like they're ghetto. They're from the streets. They're this. And you have this Black face that is talking about another Black person, this Black face that is talking about how ghetto Black people are, how we get into the league and we don't know how to act, how the money is supposed to change us and make us better. And because we change our zip code, now we're supposed to change supposedly who we are. But it's all the smoke and mirrors effect of, you're reporting on sports, but you're not really reporting on sports. You're talking about a level of respectability politics that's only applied to Black people, because when it's a white athlete doing some of the same things that he's called Black athletes on the carpet for, then they are just tough. They are just an aggressive. They're not even called an aggressive player. Only the Black players are called aggressive players. I look at it now in the world of female sports. Let's say female basketball, for instance. White girls get out there and they commit blatant fouls and they're just tough. They are just playing the game on another level. Black girls do it. Oh, they're the typical angry Black woman who is not a true sportsman, who doesn't have the intellect and doesn't have the skill, and all they can do is pick a fight because they don't know anything more. we have people within the world of reporting and sports commentary that are also there for counterinsurgency to make sure that you don't see sports for what it is, that you only see the entertainment of it, and that you too, as a Black person, would begin to say, oh my goodness, why is Angel Reese wearing those eyelashes, and why she got that weave, and how come she just can't, have her hair pulled back in a ponytail like this one or that one or the other one who is not a Black player? Because now here we are trying to make our players conform to an image that's been created by somebody with, first of all, like no legitimate claim within the world of sports reporting, because many times we are hearing this from female commentators when they're talking about women's basketball in particular. Then other times we'll get it from these white male commentators talking about Black women, whether it's in the NBA or the WNBA or college basketball, and the standards are always different. We are always the aggressor. We are always belligerent. White people get praised for violence because that is the brutish nature of white people. And it's always a problem whenever Black people do it back. I mean, we see that with slave rebellion, right? It was okay for slave masters to brutalize and enslave people. But oh my goodness, it was not okay when enslaved people were able to rise up and exact some of that same vengeance upon the oppressors. It's always a dichotomy, but you always have, some all too willing punk Negroes, I'll say, who are willing to advance that narrative. So that's what I'll say on that.
Yeah, and just for the viewers, I'm glad that we went down this avenue as much as we're gonna get into the article. But you made valid points, because that's what the Dan Patrick School was teaching, was to turn your back on your on being Black, demonizing others from your diaspora. And I was not willing to do that. And I had started to have a major pushback and had called one of my professors racially insensitive because, and I'll just say it here, on live, didn't like my midterm, project that she needed me to complete. That had no particular set of, it was, no age. It was, I'll send it to you behind the scenes, but nonetheless, she gave me a negative grade on it, which was with a lot of bullshit criticism that came with it that didn't correlate with what her instructions were for the project. And so I, in part, me and my friend had the same exact teacher. He basically had confessed that he did his through ChatGPT, and had to redo the class over again. Almost lost his schooling, his scholarship and everything. But gave him an A. And then when he confessed to it, they never, it took months before they had changed the, everything. But me, I followed the instructions. You give me feedback that's using statistics and stuff that weren't riddled in major league statistics that you asked. They're riddled in minor league statistics. So it's just ask backwards approach. But you made a valid point, on the Stephen A. Smith and his evolution. But I wanted to, I was tying, my connections to being a journalist now, based off of the situations that I've seen, is that it was far more important for me to talk about, if I were to talk about basketball, if I were to talk about this, let's talk about the seriousness of things that people might not know, or bring a decolonial perspective to it. And there's an individual by the name of Abu Bakarat that is a journalist, a well-renowned journalist now. He's younger than me. I believe he's about 21 years old. He started off as a sports journalist in Palestine. Okay? He's Palestinian. He is now one of the most renowned geopolitical journalists because of the situation. And that's not by, choice, that's by force, because he chose to make the decision to put himself in a position to document what happened to his people. And a lot of the individuals that you're going to see here on the screen had done the same exact thing. Had become journalists and had started documenting the atrocities that was happening to their people. So Israel kills 5 journalists, over 100 civilians in one night, as quote, Gideon's chariots, end quote, begins in Gaza. Now this is coming out. This was at May 18th. So this is coming out, but there is new information that has said that I guess that the UK has stopped all aid, or Britain has stopped all aid to Gaza, not to Gaza, to Israel, because of their now continued bombardment, which I don't believe. There is an individual by the name of Matt Kennard that you can find on X that has every morning tracked the flight records from UK to Cyprus that then go straight into Ben Gurion Airport, which is Israel, or is not real. And so we know that there is complicity. We know that they just recently had deployed U.S. and UK troops. There's dual citizenship there, so there are U.S. troops there, and there has been these U.S. troops there. The fallacy is being unriddled as we speak. This article also goes into the states, or starts off with it. At least 5 Palestinian journalists and scores of civilians were killed by Israel and Gaza overnight, as Tel Aviv has intensified its airstrikes on tents housing air displaced people and escalated attacks on hospitals in the Strip. The carnage comes after Israel announced at the start of the new operation in Gaza, dubbed Gideon's Chariots. Within hours, journalists Abdul Raham al-Abdillah, Aziz al-Hajar, Ahmed al-Zaninati, Khalid Abu Sief, and Noor Kwandil were killed in the Israeli airstrikes in various parts of Gaza Strip, along with members of their families. And so these are the individuals that were indiscriminately genocided by Israel. It says right here in the
propaganda control.
We scared the shit out of me.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help it.
No, I was on a different screen. I was
trying to wait, till you got to a good place to stop. But it's, this is what we just mentioned about controlling the media, about controlling the narrative, propaganda, and how it is that things get out and what gets out. And this has been a major part of the genocidal plan from the beginning, was to make sure that it could not be properly documented, to make sure that the majority of what the world would see would come through the eyes of the colonizers and the genociders, not from those who were experiencing bombardment, who were moving from camp to camp, supposed refugee camp to refugee camp, but constantly in a state of danger. When Is Not Real tells you that you have to leave this place and you have to move to another place, they're kettling you so that they can bomb the entire place that everybody's being moved to. And for some reason, we got dumb behind senators and Congress people, in the House of Representatives, sitting up just saying, oh yeah, send more bombs to Israel. Oh yeah, take from those black people over there who need it in St. Louis and let's give it to Is Not Real. Let's continue to make people here struggle for health care, but pay for health care for every Israeli. Let's make people here continue to go broke trying to pay for a college education when they can't even get a job with their degree. But let's make sure that every Israeli has free university. Miss me with it.
Yeah, and again, free healthcare for them while people here starve. And this is going to go correlate into what our next segment will be as soon as we play this video. Because again, if you don't think that if you don't believe what we're saying, just know that their words will get you to believe what we're saying, is that they are nothing. They're colonialists. They have said and they use the word colony.
They do.
For those that don't know, Theodore Herzl wrote letters to Rhodesia, formerly now known as Zimbabwe. And in those letters, it had alluded that this was a colonial project. Mm-hmm. A colonial project. So settler colonialism has never left. It has always It has been a structure that has been told that it is a time period, and it is manipulated into individuals into believing that it's a justifiable time periods even. No, the counter-revolution The revolution that happened, quote unquote, in 1776 is a counter-revolution in 1776. The revolution in 1836 that we were told, the Great Alamo, was a counter-revolution. It was every accusation is a confession, and every victory that they fought in the occupied territories of Turtle Island is an oppressive moment that indigenous people have had to feel. They've had to endure and live through. So when I see the continued bombardment of my brothers and sisters in Palestine, Palestinians that, again, some of which were medical students that now have turned into journalists on TikTok, by providing sufficient evidence that not even the ICJ or the ICC will fucking use, because, again, these are institutions that are internationally created by a bunch of oligarchical systems. So there's no justification, there's no justice that will come out of these systems. They can play and put the robes on and come together, but we all know that those time periods are meaningless. They mean nothing. They mean nothing.
Absolutely.
Same way that the greedy white men sitting up at a boardroom, at this point, to society, it seems like means nothing, but it should, because they're controlling everything and manipulating us with our own words. It's I've said it like 10 times in this live, comrade. It's egregious. It's egregious.
It is.
So let's play this video so people can hear for their very, for themselves what these people are talking about.
ושלא יישאר שם ילד עזתי אחד. אין ניצחון אחר. אני אומר לך יותר מזה. כל ילד, כל תינוק בעזה הוא אויב. האויב הוא לא החמאס, והוא גם לא הזרוע הצבאית של החמאס, כמו שהפצ"רית שלנו מספרת לנו שאסור לנו לפגוע בחמאסניק, אלא אם כן הוא חלק מהזרוע הצבאית. כל ילד בעזה הוא האויב. אנחנו צריכים לכבוש את עזה וליישבה, ושלא יישאר שם ילד עזתי אחד. אין ניצחון אחר. אני אומר...
So basically stating that every child, every baby in Gaza is an enemy. The enemy is not Hamas. We need to conquer Gaza and to colonize it and not leave a single Gazan child there. There is no other victory. Those are his words, not mine. And this is the behavior and the intellect of these individuals that say that they're being targeted and they're, poor me, but for 77 years you caused this. And if we wanted to historically look at that particular landmass, we could go back to the Battle of Akko when Napoleon got his ass packed up by the Ottoman Empire. So,
and I will also say that you have people here in the United States who are saying the same exact thing. There is the case of a judge right here in DeKalb County, Georgia, where I live, who posted on Facebook that there are no innocent people in Gaza. And when another user said, wow, you're a judge and you're saying that there are no innocent people in Gaza, maybe you don't need to be a judge, because what if you said that every Black defendant is guilty, that there are no innocent Black defendants? I think you're biased, and I think that there is something to be said about you and your ability to judge fairly. This type of sentiment, Zionism, as we know it, is rampant here. I think it's the reason why increasingly I've been having conversations with other pastors who are saying, Reverend Kiana, how do I get people to understand what Christian nationalism is and that it's not okay? How is it that we can mobilize other people against Zionism? Because people are understanding that this is the gospel of hatred, that this is not what God called for, that this is not anything that is biblical in nature. And you know what? Let me not say that. It might be biblical in nature, but the validity of the Bible is in dispute. There's a lot of questions about that shit. Like, there are some things that people need to understand about your Bible. And it can be the Bible, but what I do understand is that that is not the infallible word of God. You can call it the Bible all you want. I don't even care. I don't know if Bible means anything. It's a Bible. That shit is no different than any other book on your shelf.
With a Wu-Tang thing, basic instruction. Let me stop.
You know, they used to tell us when we was in church, you know what Bible stands for? Basic instructions before leaving Earth. Yeah, those are basic instructions for colonizers, for Zionists, for white people, because that's all that shit promotes is death and destruction to anybody who is not. So hey, I don't know. You know, yes, I am a Baptist preacher, but a lot of stuff is in question right now. A lot of things are in limbo. I say it literally every time I preach. I have to make sure I let people know I'm still decolonizing my own mind. I'm still on my own journey. And you know, I just have to say, Mercurial Lore had mentioned, and I wasn't able to answer before we ended the broadcast yesterday, but Mercurial Lore asked about what do I think about Dr. Ray Hagen's? And what I would say is that, you know, Dr. Hagen's ideology and trajectory seems like the same one that I'm on right now. And I just have nothing but love, respect, and appreciation for him, and honor him and his courage for standing up to what so many Black people demonize, and that is free thought in the space of religion and spirituality.
Yeah, and that's one of the main things why before even, you know, I had asked you if you wanted to join this, you know, in the process of, you know, recruiting some more members and stuff. I had always had gravitated towards your understanding of you know, the gospel, and that's what I've always known it as. To me, is gospel. I've never known it as a religion. I've known it as gospel. My great aunt that I told you guys about yesterday, that you guys seen, but most importantly, you know, growing up, you know, with a great grandmother that firmly believed in God, and you know, and you know, if you do good things will come to you. But understood. She was a morning star. For those that don't know what a morning star was, it's like a female adjacent to a Mason. And you know, my great grandmother was, you know, the backbone of my family, and she always talked about that and emphasized, you know, that, you know, just know that if you don't have nothing, you got him, you know. And I've steered away, I've came back, I've, you know, and that's my journey, you know. Like you said, it's a journey of decolonizing, but it's never in a respectful tone. I know some people might have seen, or I've been a part of some conversations where I've brung up the truth of exploitation and genocide that comes with religions, but you can't get mad at me for pointing out the obvious. It's not
that's right. It's the truth.
So, you know, if we do, let's see, here. Okay, I think that will, or do we got time?
I think we do. I think we can do this in a few minutes.
Y'all know I'm not good with East Coast and West Coast time trying to decipher. Y'all know I'm not good with math. Okay, let's go to a quick break. We only got one more story left, so that's the South African story, which seems to be to me has been the most funniest story to come about out of geopolitical news, because the fact that they're even trying to identify this as a genocide, I think, is ridiculous. But even AI knows this isn't a genocide, and I thought this was hilarious, because this is now the third time that we've seen AI turn against its makers. One in Gronk, two in Israel's dogs that they have, and three in Israel's whole entire AI model, and basically classifying it as a Zionist when it was made by a Zionist. It's wild. But this is going to be Chris Hani going in depth about South Africa, his experiences as a young freedom fighter. And so we'll be back with this last and final story. Hope you guys are enjoying. Again, my name is Isaac Jasper. This is Reverend Kiana Jones Moore, and we are part of the Rise Up Morning Show, but most importantly, Black Power Media Reloaded, which you can support at patreon.com/Black Power Media Reloaded. We're gonna let Chris Hani preach for a little under 5 minutes, a little under 6 minutes. We'll be back, you guys.
I was a militant and angry young man. I wanted to go back and fight after resting for a few months. I found our movement totally unprepared for the continuation of the armed struggle in South Africa. That was my reading of the situation. Of course, there were reasons that they were put forward. I found a lot of preoccupation with solidarity work, with international work, and I found a lot of demoralization amongst our chaps who were in camps in Zambia. And I began to agitate for the resumption of the armed struggle, for seriousness on the part of the leadership. I'm using the word seriousness because in my own view, and this was a subjective point of view, that they were not serious. And I became part of the writing of a memorandum which was very critical of the leadership. Well, that memorandum put us into some trouble. The leadership was angry. They thought our attacks were unfounded and irrational. And some of them felt that our attacks bordered on insubordination and on mutiny. We were suspended from the organization. But that memorandum brought about a lot of heated discussion within the ANC. The need to have a conference, the need to work out a clearer strategy of struggle, of revolutionary struggle. And ironically, there was the Morogoro conference. We were excluded from the Morogoro conference because we were regarded as rebels. But I'm able to say that Morogoro conference ushered in serious discussions which led to for the first time to the formulation of a clear strategy about the waging of a revolutionary war in the country, of a people's war, the need to build the underground, the need for propaganda, the need for mass mobilization. So, despite the fact that, I sort of suffered as a co-author of the document in terms of isolation, in terms of suspension, but I felt that I was going to accept any sort of punishment because I told the people, though some of them thought that I was a traitor, that, my basic objective is struggle in South Africa. I could have left, as others did, and to go and study. I had a degree from Rhodes University. But I felt that I was not going to go and study. It was my revolutionary duty to be part of the armed struggle of the revolution in South Africa. So I was able to understand, the anger and the bitterness of others. And but I felt that, whatever they said, I was not a traitor. I had no malicious intentions in writing that document. That document was a product of my own subjective feelings about the need to intensify the battles inside South Africa. And I'm happy that, we remained and they continue to be part of preparations for the continuation of the political and military struggle inside our country. I want to be honest. I was annoyed. I was marooned in the Transkei when the decision was taken to suspend the armed struggle. My indemnity had been withdrawn. I had spent more than 27 years in MK. I'd spent the best part of my life in an armed struggle against this regime. I was angry and bitter that this decision was taken without comprehensive consultation. That was my immediate gut feeling. I didn't sleep when our delegation was locked with de Klerk negotiating. I was waiting for the outcome. When there was that press conference early in the morning announcing the suspension of military activities, I felt like crying. I'm one of the people who have seen comrades dying, both inside the country and outside the country, in the struggle against the regime of terror in Pretoria. I know the names, I know the faces. I know how these young people put aside everything in life to concentrate in the fight against white domination. And I said to myself, probably this was the right decision. But why was it that there was no widespread consultation with those who were actually involved in the physical side of armed struggle? That was my initial reaction. But like a disciplined soldier, a disciplined member of the movement, the decision had been taken. I had to understand this decision. And when it was explained that it was important to maintain the momentum of negotiations, I was ready to be reined in to explain it to other comrades. And I did it. Because in a movement as big as ours, sometimes you've got to subject your own strong personal views and accept the views of
All right, we are back. We're going to conclude, but before we go, we will say that there is no damn genocide going on for white South Africans. We will be back with that story tomorrow for you guys. I want to say thank you guys for tuning in. Reverend Kiana, thank you for joining us. I know you got a dip like 4 or 5 minutes ago. We're going to end now. Again, thank you up to the uprisers. Like, share, subscribe, donate to our Patreon. And you guys will see us hopefully tomorrow. So rise up.
Woo, fam, rise up.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares. Mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and a stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution, it's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky. Like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution, it's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution, where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.